Hello and welcome to episode 6 of this space exploration Factorio series. Now, in the last episode, we kind of built this little platform that we've got up here, this small little base, and we tried many times to connect it to a control panel on our base planet. And that was a whole travail, but we've got it working now, so we can move on with our lives onto the next thing. And the next thing is this platform. That's why we're starting right here. I want to develop this little platform so that it's making a few more things, potentially moving some stuff around. You know, immediately I'm looking at these solar panels, because the moment I get rid of these mines, those solar panels are going to be in the way, and then the moment I remove those, I'm going to break the connection with my base planet, and then my failsafe is going to be used exactly like I thought it would. You know, whilst this is being developed, it's going to be mostly turned off probably. That's how I build these factories. So that failsafe, just absolutely invaluable. And to be honest, I'm going to monitor it. I'm just going to keep an eye on it just to make sure it's doing what I want it to do. So let's get on with it. Let's build this base out. Let's have some more stuff up here. That's what I want to do. So, I've got a pretty basic, pretty decent factory up here now. So I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. It's making all of the things. Actually, it's not making all the things. I just thought something else it's not making. But it's making most of the things on my list, or most of the things that I wanted to make. The things that I was going to make was underground pipes and these other extended pipes, which I was looking at, which I was going to put up here, but I kind of forgot about that. But anyway, what we're having is an issue with supply of materials, and this kind of comes back to the rocket plan that I set out earlier with all. Let's get rid of this. With the rocket plan I set out earlier with all of the stuff that the quantities of ingredients I was going to put on a rocket in order to achieve science. Now, we aren't just doing science up here. We're constructing a whole load of stuff, and so we're using different quantities of materials than what I had allotted in that chart, because, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff in here. I mean, just to give you an example, I'm sure this is obvious, but, you know, I've got a box down here with underground belts, and this needs lube, and that lube wasn't on my chart, and it also needs conveyor belts. So it's actually withdrawing conveyor belts from the system and slowing down science. So it overall, you know, and that's just one box. We've got splitters, we've got loaders, we've got scaffold. I mean, scaffold is hungry. Scaffold is really hungry. Pipes, you know, space assembly machines, which I've brought up here anyway. I know I'm making them on the base planet, but I feel like that saves me doing one less thing on the base planet and bringing it up. You know, all of the things that a space assembly machine needs, I'm already bringing, so why not make it up here? I might demolish that part of the factory and put something else in it. You know, there's still a fair amount of finessing to do on the base planet. Then we've got biochemical thingamajig, something else, decontamination, and then manufacturing. And that's the basics. And the plan at the moment is that if I uncover something else that I need to make and it just uses these ingredients, then I'll plumb it in over here somewhere, or maybe up here somewhere. And if there's new ingredients, then I'll bring them up here. And if I need some of these ingredients with some of these new ingredients, then I'll try and find a way to feed some of these up and come across. I don't know. In here at the moment, we've got the advanced lab. This needs the sulfur battery, which I'm not making yet, and that's not got any space down here. So that I figured that's a good thing to bring up here on this new kind of bus to open up this fourth side of the landing pad if I need it. Well, I probably will need this at some point, but there might be other things. But one of the things that we are drastically short on, and constantly drastically short on, is low density structure. We probably don't need all that much of it for science. It's not a very big number on the science list, but it has crept up as the rocket launches have increased, because all of these things just need so much low density structure, and that scaffold is one of those ones. Manufacturing is another one. Conveyor belt. There's so much low density structure up here, and I just can't meet the demand. And the reason for that is because of steel. Let me just take you back to the base planet and give you an overview of where my problems lie, because it's informative. So when I set up the iron production here, the steel that I've got in here only works with molten iron. It doesn't. I haven't got a setup in here for making steel out from iron plate. Now, in order to make the steel plate that I've been relying on was coming from my starter factory for a very, very long period of time. I relied on the steel from that starter factory for quite a significant period of time. In fact, right up until the moment I had demolished it and made my nuclear power. So when I did this, I had immediately, I've got no steel plate anymore. So I've set up a temporary little kind of setup here just to deliver steel plate, but it's pathetic, really. It doesn't really produce all that much. I mean, I'm not really producing a lot of iron, so it's about proportionate to what the iron that the factory can spare at this moment in time. But the amount of steel that I'm producing is just pathetic. So low density structure, which is over here, here, is struggling. Although it has been struggling for the other things, for copper and for glass as well. So overall, low density structure on this little base, on this little platform, it's been a real challenge, real struggle. I'm not producing enough on Novice, but I can't produce any more than what I have without pyroflux. So, I mean, it's the next stage, it's the next thing. We need to be talking about what the plan is from here. Now, when I've been looking through the science, it feels like, you know, the game has been pushing me to get me into space. That was the prime. That's been the prime focus up to now. And now that we're here, it feels like we have some options. Like there's 2, 3, maybe 4 different kind of sciences we can unlock at this point, depending on which direction we want to go. Like we're not being pushed in one direction. We've actually got. It feels like we've got some options. Now, I want my pyroflux. Like the steel is important, and I want my koverex. That's important, and both of those seem to be coming from these Vulcanite blocks. But what I also, and see, this is a thing that I didn't realise that I would get here and struggle for this particular item. But one item I really, really need is a requester chest, and I did not appreciate how long I would be waiting for one of these things. Did not appreciate that it would take me this long. A requester chest, it feels like we should be given those things when we get robots. The idea that I have, you know, I've been running around my factory. I've got like 3 or 4 ingredients that are relying on the robot network to move around, and I obviously can't do it without any requester chests, and I'm having to do it. It's really, really annoying. And some of those ingredients are the things that I need for rocket parts. Like I've set up a chest for fast inserters, I've set up a chest for pumps and for storage tanks, and all of those things. I imagined that at this point I would have a requester chest, and I could have set up a little robot network just to move those 3 things, but I can't because I have none of them. Absolutely, this is an infuriating item not to have. Koverex I can accept. You know, pyroflux, I may have misjudged how long it took me to get there, but a requester chest, man, the idea of gatekeeping that just. That's one in the ribs. That is a knee in the ribs. So I'm now looking at these, principally those 3 things, really, to be honest. And how do I get them? And I get them by Vulcanite blocks. So we may have this kind of choice, this option of paths, potential ways we can go from this point, but I'm going to concentrate on Vulcanite. Now, I've already been thinking about this. I've been looking at the recipe list. These are my notes. Let me put it up for you. Let me grab the right page in my book. Now, what we have is it feels like we've got a process that's similar to koverex in that we have vulcanite. The vulcanite creates two things. It creates crushed vulcanite and it creates enriched vulcanite, and it doesn't create very much of the enriched. Most of the stuff we get back is the crushed, and then we need to put that through some centrifuges to adjust the ratio of that, and then when the ratio is correct, we want that process to stop stop working, and then we want to put the output of that into another process which creates the vulcanite blocks, and those are the things which go on the rocket. That's my understanding of the situation. That's the current plan. And there's a whole lot of things on here that we need as a result to be able to make vulcanite blocks. And not just to make vulcanite blocks, but just to make a factory. So I've been having a look. Mariel, here we are, Mariel. Another planet name I don't know how to pronounce. Jesus, right. So I've been having a good look around here because it turns out that this little satellite view, I can unlock areas of the map. Anyway, so what I've been doing up here is I've just been looking around trying to figure out how to plan stuff out. So power, I think initially I'm going to be relying on solar power because there's no water up here, and the only realistic power that I'm going to be able to get is uranium power, nuclear power, and obviously I haven't got any koverex yet, so that's pointless setting that up, and that's going to require a whole lot of logistics, delivering water barrels. If I just arrive on the planet with a whole lot of solar, I've at least got something to get going with, and then I can upgrade it at some later point. And in terms of the factory processes that are going to go on here, I've been trying to... Do I need a train network up here? That's really where my mind is at, if I'm being honest. Do I need a train network up here? I know I've got no biters, but... all of these resources are fairly well spread out. It's going to make life a whole lot easier. And let's not forget, all of the conveyor belts that I need to transport up here are going to have to come on a rocket. If I'm using thousands and thousands of conveyor belts, whereas a whole lot of train tracks, that just seems a whole lot simpler. Yeah, and it will lose. Yeah, so I'm thinking about that, still pondering. Another thing, I'm also going to need a whole lot of cliff explosives because these things are going to annoy the hell out of me. If you've never watched me before, you know that. And yeah, that's probably about as far as my mind has got at this moment in time. Power, vulcanites, processing of the vulcanites. I did briefly look at iridium because we are producing iridium up here, but is that iridite? But that's not my priority, and that looks like a whole other complicated process that I don't really want to get into. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliver a few more rockets to here, and hopefully I will get to a point where I've overwhelmed it with low density structure and all of the boxes are filled, we are just doing science. And then I'm going to start, well, I've already started. I'm going to start accumulating some materials so that, I'm still clicking the wrong buttons, so that I can put it on a rocket, blast off into Mariel, and start building stuff. This is my little collection of goodies that I'm going to take with me. So that's the current plan. Don't know how the timing-wise or sequence-wise just yet when it's going to happen, but that's probably what's going to happen in the next interlude before I have a chance to talk on the mic again. So let's see if we can get this going. And we are here on Mariel, whatever it's called, and these planet names. And obviously our rocket has landed in a place which is nowhere near where I wanted to set up my factory. You know, I'd been looking at this map for a little while, and I had a position in mind where I wanted to put the factory, and we are nowhere near it. You know, that's obviously why I've had that fancy transition to get us all the way over here. So this is the nice flat part of ground which I kind of identified to build the factory in. I haven't really got much of a plan. I've got a rough idea of what I want to do with it, but you know, it really kind of depends on how it goes when I start laying it down. Now, first thing I need to do is I need to move all of these resources. And this is going to take a little bit of time because there's a bit of a run over there. But let's get started on that. And now the first thing in this time lapse that I'm going to build, probably not something you expected me to bring on my first trip to an alien planet. But there you go. That's just me. That's how I do things. I am thoroughly enjoying this process of these mods, you know, this whole adventure. This is a lot of fun, you know, the idea of being able to build these small, tight little factories that are, you know, they're designed to do just a few specific things. And I don't have to worry about a shopping mall. I don't have to worry about research. I really just can concentrate. You know, I can design this factory to be specific, or at least I can try to be anyway, because I've got slightly more centrifuges than I need here. Maybe I'm jumping a step. Okay, so the process is the ore comes off the trains. They go into these pulverizers. These pulverizers exit a variety of materials. Stone, crushed vulcanite, and enriched vulcanite. And they need to be split off so that they go into these boxes. So one of them goes into here, one of them goes into here, so we can measure them. And then we need to run it through a loop, and that's where I've got these slightly more centrifuges than I need. So this is just going to run as a loop. One's going to go into the next, round and round and round it goes. Once the levels in these boxes reach a certain level, then it will output through a different inserter. That will come down into the main bus, and that's what will feed these advanced furnaces. And the numbers are all good other than the centrifuge. Now I can fix that because I can just upgrade these belts to a faster belt. You know, in my mind, that's how I can justify it to myself. I didn't intend to justify it. So here's the thing: like, I will sit and look. I sit and looked at this thing for quite some time, and it's not the first time that I will look at a process. And I can either have too few of a something, because I've got that's how much the space I have, or I can have too many of the something. And what I tell myself is that the only person who's going to care is you. No one else is going to pick up on it. No one's going to care that you've got slightly too many centrifuges here. You know, the only person who cares is you. And so I use that as justification to kind of bastardize the system that I have and either put too few down or put too many. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh, I did it wrong. I want to go the other way because I do care. You know, I am the only one that does care. I'm the only one that's going to pick up on it, but I do care. So anyway, I sit and look at this for a good half hour judging myself. Do I stay true to the numbers? Anyway, by the by, I can justify it to myself by upgrading these blue belts to something else. And because it's in like a little safe self-contained loop, yeah, that's how I'm going to justify it to myself. And what I was getting to was that, you know, this is I can design this factory to be very, very specific. You know, the numbers, I want them to be good. So we need a few ingredients to this process that we aren't producing here currently, and that I'm planning on making on this base. I'm not planning on bringing them in from novice. So I need sulfur and I need petroleum. And one of the challenges of this planet, as I'm sure you're aware, is that there's no water here. So I'm going to need to bring in water, potentially a real lot of water, because I need water in here to enrich this vulcanite stuff. I'm going to need water to process oil. I'm going to need water for power, and I might need water for other things. You know, I've got this iridium that I'm going to need to deal with at some point, and that's on my mind because that needs sulfuric acid. I'm pretty sure that needs sulfuric acid to mine. Well, let me just check that fact before we move any further. Oh, I can't check from here. Where's the nearest patch? Here and here. Let me just go check. Let me just go check that fact before I start planning for it. .1 sulfuric acid per mining operation. That's not a lot. That's not a lot at all. Oh, I am going to need some sulfuric acid for uranium too. We're going to need to mine some uranium on this planet. We're going to get a lot of power up here. We're going to need some power up here. So anyway, that's not a lot. That's less than I thought it was going to be. That's not too bad. Alright, anyway. So where my mind is at is because we don't have water. You know, bringing water here is going to be a complete nightmare. So we need to use it sparingly. We don't want to waste any of the water that we bring here. So in the oil, this issue of water is pertinent because we've got choices as to how we process that oil, and how we process that oil will determine how much water we use. So when I was looking at the recipes, what I was judging was that this crude oil processing, this was probably the one to go for because it uses the least amount of water. But I wasn't satisfied with that as a determination. So what I've done is I've done the maths. Of course I have. So let me get out, this is the page from my sketchbook. Let me just get it out so I can see what I'm talking about. At the top of the page, we've got what this portion of the factory needs. You know, this vulcanite process. We need 9 sulfur per second. In order to get 9 sulfur, we need 135 petroleum and 135 water. And we need 45 petroleum for the furnaces at the end. That's one of the ingredients. So in total, we need 180 petroleum per second. So how do we get that petroleum? Now, me looking at these processes, I'm thinking, well, in ordinary Factorio terms, when you have a process that is laborious and it's a lot of factory units and it takes a lot of power, you know, it's laborious to build and to get it right, then in general terms, and at least the mod sets that I've looked at, that I've played before, you get benefits for having a bigger factory. You know, you get benefit when you've got these sorts of options. So in my mind, I'm automatically thinking crude oil is going to be the best one to go for because it's more laborious, because it's more work. You know, we're trying to get petroleum out of this system, so, and we're getting the most amount of heavy oil. So in my mind, I was like, well, this has got to be. But when I did the maths, it wasn't even close. So if we look at the top, we've got crude oil. The process in the middle, that's the numbers of how we process that to get to the petroleum at the end. And as a result of having 1,000 oil and 100 water, we need to spend another 14. No, I think that 100 water is already in there. So in order to get from 1,000 oil to 750 petroleum, we need 1,450 water to go through all these little processes. If we use the advanced process, then we need that same starting point, 1,000 oil. We get 867 petroleum, which is slightly more, but we use slightly more water, probably more efficiently. You know, we get more petroleum per water that we use, but not when we just process it using the standard petroleum gas formula without any oils in here. That is by far the most efficient if we're just looking at petroleum and water. You know, we get more petroleum from that, 900, than we do on any of the other processes, and we use the least amount of water by a factor of 3, for crying out loud. So I'm glad I did this little analysis, because it proved me completely wrong on what my base assumptions were. And then I've obviously gone down, okay, so this is now that I've done that analysis, how do I get this 9 sulfur and 180 petroleum? And that's kind of what I've done at the bottom, or at least I've started to. So I've got 180 petroleum, I need 10 refineries, and I need 200 oil and 100 water per second to be able to get that 180 petroleum. Now I'm going to probably process a little bit more, because I'm going to need that sulfuric acid for the iridium and the uranium. And I'm also going to produce some fuel so that I can put some in the trains. Now, in order to do that, solid fuel, let's just work our way through fuel. We need hydrogen. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking about iridium, and I've already tried to have a look at some of the recipes, and we need hydrogen chloride. So at some point, I'm going to be producing hydrogen up here. I'm going to need like another factory down on like what I'm building here. I'm building like some oil processing that's more or less specifically just for Vulcanite. It looks like I'm going to need a set of factory processes that produces the iridium, and then another little factory that deals with all these little bits and pieces. That's kind of the plan, you know. Hydrogen and chlorine. I've got sand. I think I've got maybe enough sand to be able to do that. That's a whole other thing. Stone is a whole other... That's a whole other thought process. Nitric acid. That might just be easier to bring in from Norvis. But that would be a pain in the backside. This is a whole other thing. This is a long, long ways down the road. Let's just crack on with oil, because that's the next thing on my list. And let's see, yeah, let's just do that. Okay, a whole load of little things to go through here. So we'll start off at the beginning. We've got oil processing, and now in terms of the numbers, what I was aiming for, what I wrote down was 10 refineries, and I've got 32 here. So I've overcooked it a little bit, but I'll explain why in a moment. And as always, I've tried to squeeze in the water barrels in the middle. This is overkill, way more than we need. I think, what is it, 500? I suppose we've got 32 now. 1500 water, 30 barrels. It's actually maybe not too far away. Maybe that's about proportionate to what I need, barrels of water wise. And we move over, we've got sulfur. Now this is well overkill, and the reason is because of uranium. Now when we start mining uranium, we need a huge flood of sulfuric acid to be able to fill the system before it can really get going. And it's actually quite important to get over that hump as quickly as possible. So, if I'm producing way more sulfur and sulfuric acid than I need, it just pushes me through that hump quicker. Sulfuric acid is a useful thing to have a lot of, in my experience. So anyway, and then we've got fuel, and this is hugely overkill. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if it comes down to it, I can remove half of this, to be honest, remove one half, make it non-symmetrical, maybe make up a little bit more space up here that I can put something else in there. I don't need this much fuel for the trains. But then we got a gap, and this is kind of a future preparation for stuff that potentially I don't know anything about. I'll try and fill it at some point in the future, hopefully. And we work our way down. Now, I've been thinking, so sulfuric acid, I need iron plate. Now there is a little bit of iron on this planet, not a lot, but enough to be able to satisfy sulfuric acid. So I figured, well, let's bring a train of iron in, and let's make that iron plate on this planet, because there's no point bringing in a small quantity of iron plate especially if I've got all the materials and resources and ingredients to be able to do it here. And then that thought process led me to, okay, well, if I'm making iron plate, well then I may as well make steel plate, because I'm going to need steel plate for uranium fuel when I get there. So Yeah, and if I need steel plate, then I need coke, and if I need coke, then I need wood. So yeah, this is kind of developed into a little bit more of a miscellaneous section than I originally anticipated. And over here, what we've got is some storage for stone and sand, because we're creating stone and sand as a byproduct of the Vulcanite process. And at the moment, we're not using that anywhere, but you know, there's not a lot of stone on this planet. I have had a look around. There is a few. There's a fairly decent patch up here somewhere. Where was it? Show yourself. I thought I had a pretty big patch of it somewhere. Maybe I'm missing something. Anyway, clearly there's not a lot of stone. That was kind of where my point was going. There's not a lot of stone on here. There is a patch here somewhere that I've spotted previously. I think there's like 1 million in it or something. So I have got enough to, you know, make the things that I need, but I do need to be sparing with it. And also, there's a whole lot of rocks everywhere. And whenever I build, I obviously need to remove those rocks. And all of that stone, that's useful stone that I can put in the system, particularly if we haven't got a lot of the stuff. I mean, I've been saving it up. Ordinarily, when I'm on Novice and I pick up a whole lot of stone, I just instantly convert it into landfill, because stone just occupies space in my inventory. And landfill, I'm always using landfill. So that's what I generally do when I start picking it up. But I stopped doing that pretty quickly when I got on here. Got up here. I think, what did I made 30 of them before I thought, hang about, I need to conserve some of this stone. So I've started to lock it up in a box. So and I'm going to be creating sand somewhere else in here as well. So I need somewhere to put it, because I don't want to waste it. That's really the key. I don't want to convert it into something else that I'm not going to use. Hello?
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 Hello, is that Nick?
That's me, yeah?
A few moments later.
The world doesn't stop turning just because I'm playing Factorio. Work carries on in my... Yeah, that was a little bit of an interruption. Where was I? Stone, yes. So I don't want to waste it. I want to conserve it. I want to preserve it. Whatever stone I have available on this base, I want to be able to use productively. I want to make sure I make the most of it. So I'm going to store it for the time being. Obviously, at some point in the future, I'm going to need chlorine, and that's kind of where my mind is. Half of this is going to be storing sand, and half of it's going to be storing stone. At the moment, I am using a little bit of sand in the greenhouses, but not a lot. So I'm imagining that this might grow a little bit. Also, in my mind, you know, future plans, it feels to me, just gut reaction, but it feels to me like Vulcanite is an important thing. Like, we need it not only just for science, but we need it for pyroflux. And pyroflux goes into iron and steel, and iron and steel, and copper, and those three things are really, really important. So we're going to probably be using quite a lot of the stuff, and that what I've built here might not be enough. You know, the general architecture of the factory is the same sort of general architecture that I follow as my default mode. You know, when you put me into a corner or I don't really know what I'm doing, this is the sort of geometry I'll follow. So we'll have a column or a row. You know, you can change the orientation of this. In this respect, in this factory, it's a column. This will deal with train stations. So I've got train stations in here for the Vulcanite, and then I'm going to put several train stations in here because I need one for oil, I need one for iron, I need one for coal at the moment in here. I need 3 train stations in here. So in my mind, the standard geometry is that this is the train stations, then we have a column of factory units, then we have a column of bus, and then on the other side of the bus we have another column of factory units, and then on the other side of that we have a column of trains. And we can go on forever doing this. You know, I could take this one, I could put more train tracks in here, I could put more factory here, and then I could have another bus, and then I could have more factory, and then I could have more train tracks. You know, it's a really, really repeatable kind of pattern, and it gives me a structure that I can use when I can't really plan stuff out. So, if, you know, in terms of expansion, in terms of what I need for this Vulcanite, I'm imagining that I'm going to have this bus, then I'm going to have this same block flipped around, and so it's symmetrical around the bus, with these train tracks, another set of train stations on the other side, and that will kind of set up the base default. That will set up the structure for the rest of the base. Underneath that, I'm going to need more oil. So this oil is sized specifically, more or less. You know I have overdone it, but I've designed it just to feed this block. So if I build another one of these blocks on the other side, then I'm going to need another one of these blocks underneath that. And then in my mind, underneath that, I don't need any more miscellaneous iron and steel, but I might need some miscellaneous stones. Like I might need to turn some of this stone into sand to go into chlorine. Like I might need some crushers and stuff, and I might want to also start maybe dealing with some overflow of that stone. What happens if I've got too much stone? You know, that might be quite a rare occasion, but the situation in my mind, my overflow situation for stone at the moment is to make walls, because walls are something I'm going to need a lot of just for these paths and everything else. So if I need to sink some stone, if I need to lose some stone into a process, that's where I'm going to put it. I'm not going to do it default. I'm not going to set it. I don't think I'm really going to set it up. I think I'm just going to keep it in the back of my mind just in case. My plan at the moment is to bring walls back from novice, because that's just easier. And I'm not wasting any stone that way. I'm trying to, this planet, I'm trying to conserve stone. I don't mind bringing in that stuff from somewhere else. And in terms of novice, I've had to do a few little trips. There was a behemoth biter that got within one of my walls, and it took out about 50 turrets, and that really needed some attention. It happened, and then I left it for an hour or so because I was dealing with this. But once I got over there and I dealt with it, I was like, okay, what else do I need? So you may have already spotted it while I was over here a moment ago. I've brought an absolute shed ton of barreled water, just to get me going. I don't really know how far away I am from setting up a permanent supply of barreled water, so every time I go back to Norwich, I'm just going to fill the rocket with as much barreled water as I can. And this kind of puts me into a separate mindset, because I know barrels. I know how they work. And what I'm doing is I'm withdrawing an enormous amount of barrels from the system, bringing them here, putting them in a box, and then at some point I'm going to have to bring them back again. And in my mind, what I'm creating for myself here is an enormous problem for the future. Every time I bring a full steel chest of barrels onto this planet, in my mind, I'm going to need a chest dedicated to those same barrels in my barrel storage area on Novice. So in my mind, say I've got maybe 200 chests in that barrel storage area. I've already used 11 of them, and if I brought another 11, then that would be 22, and then I'm suddenly very, very quickly using up the amount of storage, that buffer storage. That's what's in my mind. This is all flux. This is all barrels that are not in the system. This is all stuff these are the barrels that I worry about. So I foresee a real issue at some point in the future, particularly now that I think about it. I haven't got a method for removing barrel overflow from that system. I didn't build one in. And that was something that was very important in my barrel loop video. That was a very important lesson, was that I do that, and I didn't. So it's on my mind. Barrels are on my mind. But in terms of future, what I need to do is I need to zoom the camera out a little bit, and I need to start putting these materials in. I want to start mining some Vulcanite. I want to start mining some iron, some coal, and I want to set up all of the rail networks and the train stations and everything that goes with it, so that I can test run this little setup that I have here, and maybe, yeah. See, what I really want to do is I want to get enough Vulcanite so that I can get koverex. That's priority number one. I want to get to that point. So if I can get to that point with just what I have here, then that's what I'll do. But it is on my mind that I want to double what I've already built. That's what's on my mind. And whether I want to do that now or do I want to wait a little while. Anyway, let's see what happens once I start filling this stuff with stuff, because that might change my mind. lot of learning. A lot of learning is going on. Well, maybe learning is the wrong word. Thinking. A lot of thinking is going on at the moment. And the reason is because logistically, it doesn't feel like there's a clear and obvious path. So what I've done is I've been through this already. I'm producing Vulcanite blocks here. And that was my automatic reaction to this problem was, well, we can't really... I'm not going to ship Vulcanite ore through space. I mean, I didn't want to do it. That wasn't my plan. And subsequently, you know, I've discovered that the stack size of that ore is quite small. And that's another reason why I had to add another train station. I've been playing around with the time-lapse a little bit, trying to get things right. And when I set it off going to record all the materials going into the factory, I discovered that the ore stack size was quite small. So there were some other problems. I ran out of power as well. So I've adjusted an enormous solar field down here to give me some power. And I added some train stations and then I went back and re-recorded it. But the point of what I'm talking about is that all in all, I'm not going to put Vulcanite ore on a rocket. So the place where I've ended up, which is to move these Vulcanite blocks, is probably the sensible thing to do. But I've not done it before, so I'm questioning everything. And the reason why I'm questioning everything is because this is just ridiculously thirsty. Just really, really thirsty. I did a quick calculation. I think I've gone through about 8,000 barrels of water in about an hour and a half. That's a lot of water. And I don't know whether this is the problem that needs to be solved, whether I'm contriving it to be the problem because I don't know the right way of doing it. I don't necessarily want you to tell me. I'm quite happy finding it out for myself. But I'll tell you where my mind is at. So I was thinking about water. I was like, okay, maybe I can create water on this planet somehow. Like I can extract oxygen from the atmosphere, and at some point I've got all this sand, and I'm going to be making hydrogen chloride potentially for this iridium. This is another thing that I'm still thinking about. I'm not certain that I'm going to be making iridium here, but I'm just keeping my options open for the moment. So if I'm making hydrogen up here to make hydrogen chloride, then I can extract some oxygen from the atmosphere and make water. But, you know, the formula for hydrogen... So if we're doing water electrolysis to get the chlorine and the hydrogen, we actually need more water. This is adding to my problems. But not only that, but we get the same amount of chlorine and hydrogen out of the process. And when we make hydrogen chloride, we use the same amount of chlorine and hydrogen. So there is no deficit, there is no surplus, there is nothing we can use. If we were producing more hydrogen as a result of this process, then I could use that surplus to make water with some oxygen that I'd extracted from the air. But I can't. So that led me to another process. Okay, what happens if I put hydrogen in a barrel, bring that to this planet instead of water? Okay, let's have a look at it. We will get an extra 50% out of those barrels. So if we bring 1,000 barrels of hydrogen, we'll get 1,500 barrels of water. That is something. There is a benefit to be had from that. But, you know, I'm already barreling water. I've got the system set up for that. It would be a whole other deal to barrel up some hydrogen. I'm not really sure I really want to do that. So, next thought process is I need just an enormous amount of water to keep this thing running. Just an absolute, just an enormous amount of water. So, I need rockets. I need several rockets. And that's not necessarily even just for the water. You know, I need rockets to do other things. So, I need a rocket that brings water to this planet. And on that rocket, there also needs to be rocket parts and liquid fuel. Because at the moment, I've got no means of transporting anything to Norvis. Like, when we were on the space platform, we could fill up the capsule, the little cargo capsule, and our inventory, and take that back to Norvis, and we could use that stuff. But if we do it from here, we have to use an emergency burn, and that reduces it. It's like we lose 50% of our inventory, and that's... I don't want to lose the materials that we're producing up here. So the only real way to get stuff from here onto Norvis would be via a rocket. So I need to bring those rocket parts in and the fuel. So I need a rocket to bring the rocket parts and the water and the liquid fuel to here. And then I need another rocket which takes the Vulcanite blocks and I think at this moment in time it's just the Vulcanite blocks, and deliver those back to Novice. And I need another rocket which picks up all of the barrels and delivers those to Novice. So I need at least 3 rockets. And with what I've experienced, my mind is that maybe 1 rocket delivering water barrels is not going to be enough. Maybe I need 2 of them. I mean, how quick? My mind is all over the place at the moment. So, you know, what I talked about last time was about potentially doubling over here. But I actually genuinely think I'm going to have a problem satisfying what I've already built with water. That's kind of where my mind is at. But for the moment, I'm just going to put that to one side, because what I want to get started on is the uranium processing. I want to get that process going so that once I get to the point where I can switch it on, I've got enough of the uranium-235 and 238 to be able to get koverex going. So that's why I've moved the camera over here. This is the space that I'm kind of thinking of putting the nuclear power station in and all of the koverex stuff. Now, the proportions of the space aren't great, but you know, the way that I see these factory processes that I'm putting in these boxes is that I need a certain amount of area to put these factories in, and that area, theoretically speaking, can be any shape or size. It's just got to be that area. So if I can find myself by making it more narrow, which is what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at this space, then it probably just means that it's going to get really, really big, really, really deep. We will see how it goes. And then obviously I'm going to go with the same strategy and put some train stations in here to deliver that uranium ore in. And then if I do build this other side over here, this will be a gap. Well, maybe I'll put my rockets in here. That might not necessarily be a bad plan. But I'm just going to think about it for the moment. I'm not certain what I'm going to do just yet. So while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to build this uranium power. Let's do it. That's a nice little nuclear setup. I'm pretty happy with that. Wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be, but you know, I think it's going to get the job done. About halfway through building it, I had a moment where I was like, is this the right way to go? Because, you know, solar power is free and we've got no biters, so we've got essentially infinite amounts of area. You know, I'm limited by nothing really about how many solar panels and accumulators I can put down on this map. But I really don't like solar panels. Like, I see them as cheap. I like building factories. I like the process of the factory. I like all of it. And so to not do nuclear power and to do solar power instead, I just feel like that's not what I want to do, regardless of whether it's a sensible thing to do or not. But I had a moment where I was like, I'm using so much water just for sulfuric acid because we're only getting... This is what happens when you don't really investigate things and you just go on gut instinct. Because sulfuric acid, we put 200 water and we only get 100 sulfuric. So if I, for instance, brought in sulfuric acid in a barrel on a rocket ship, I'd get double the bang for my buck rather than just bringing in water. But I'd already kind of committed by that point, and I'm not gonna. I'm gonna put uranium. I'm gonna put nuclear power up here. That's really. I'm gonna put nuclear power on any planet I go to. Any planet where there is uranium that I can mine, and there's oil that I can pull up and create sulfuric acid with. I'm probably going to put nuclear power on it. Probably. It's just in my nature. So, you know, regardless of right or wrongs, you know, water-wise, once I've got the uranium mined and I've got enough nuclear power, nuclear fuel or whatever. You know, these power stations, these condensers, these shouldn't actually use all that much water. So it's not a problem once I've got it. But in the meantime, yeah, I mean, what is it? So I've got 25,000 on a train. That is 500 barrels of... So 1,000 barrels of water. Every train I fill up with sulfuric acid has got 1,000 barrels of water on it. And a rocket can do 5,000... So it's got... I can do 5 trains in a rocket ship. That's That was where I was kind of thinking. I was sitting here looking at it going, have I made the right decision? Anyway, we are. I'm going to put one of these on all planets. Let's just leave it like that. Next things, I obviously need water. A lot of water. I need to set up the rockets. And the thing is, that on my novice platform, I haven't really automated anything yet. Everything is kind of, if I need a rocket ship to get here, it's kind of on me to make it happen. Because I'm a little bit worried about automating this because, well, mainly because it was my first one and I wanted to just make sure everything was going to the right place. You know, I haven't this rocket has been here for a while. It's still not fully full of all barrels and rocket parts and stuff. So this will probably be, this one here will probably be my first proper automated setup because I'm going to need so many barrels of water that I'm going to need it to do its thing. I can't intervene every time. So that's the next thing on the list. But for today's episode, that is it. We'll have to deal with the barrels and the rockets and everything else in the next episode. I hope it's been good. Till next time.